Draft Countdown is in full combine prep mode. The USFL held its first ever college football, not its first ever, but first college football draft in its new cycle. And Billy Riccette of Jets Wire is going to join us to talk all things Jets, maybe some Eagles. Coming up on the Draft Countdown podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's edition of the Draft Countdown podcast. I'm your co-host, Brian Bosarge, joined as always by my co-host, Shane P. Hallam. Shane, we are 63 days, 22 hours, 58 minutes, and 20 seconds away from the 2023 NFL Draft.
It's combine time, like you said in the opening. I've been getting ready. We both have written our preview articles for the combine. I'm taking offense and special teams. You are taking defense. And yeah, I think it's going to be a good one this year, at least from my end, what I was writing up. So I'm excited.
If you're watching us live on YouTube, drop a question in the chat and we will answer it later in the episode. If you want to have your draft questions or football questions in general answered on Twitter, send us a tweet at Draft Countdown. And if you are a member of our Discord, ask a question there. If you're not and want to be, go to draftcountdown.com. Look at the top right corner of the search bar. There's a link to join the Discord there. Shane, 9 weeks away, man. It's creeping, man. It's creeping up.
Oh, we're getting close to kind of the next step, right? I mean, it feels like the Senior Bowl was just yesterday. I'm sure for you, it feels that way. And now we're on to kind of the next step. And I don't know, the combine's kind of the last big thing for us that we get in terms of the evaluations, and then it's the rechecks and all the buzz and that kind of stuff coming out.
Yeah, I mean, you see pro day numbers trickle out, so we're consistently adding those as well. And it's just, we said the draft 9 weeks away. We were discussing off air our plans for our live coverage of the NFL draft. We're going to do it again this year, Shane. Bell to bell, pick one to the last pick. We're going to go live all 3 days of the NFL draft. So yeah, it's going to be fun. We had a great time with that last year, and we hope everybody pops in there and joins us again, especially all those diehards on day 3.
Absolutely, day 3 it's a marathon. I think we wore down last year, but I'm trying to build up the stamina a little bit this time to pump right through day 3, be ready to go.
So as I did mention earlier in the open, full combine prep mode here for us, Shane. I know we both, like I said, we both got our previews up, or not up, but they will be up this weekend. I think you got the offense going up Saturday, and I'll have the defense going up on Sunday. What I looked forward to last year for sure was you did 40 predictions for every single player that's at the combine. Now we know some aren't going to run, and some, probably aren't going to test at all, but it's still fun to gauge where you think some of these guys, and why is that important, Shane? You brought it up on Twitter the other day, but tell everybody listening to the podcast why these 40 predictions are so important for you.
I think it's something that's important for draft analysts to do, is just try to guess. And I wish I had time for every combine number, because I think it'd be helpful. But basically, if you guess how fast the player is, how fast they're going to time, when they actually run the 40, whether it be at the combine or the pro day, you get to compare that to your prediction. And if it's similar, if it's close, then you're like, okay, that's where I had this guy. It's how fast I thought he was. So I mentioned on Twitter, someone like Devin Achane from Texas A&M, probably going to run the 4.2s. I already know he's probably going to run the 4.2s, right? So if he runs a 4.27 to 4.32, I don't have to bump him up my rankings. I had that in. So I think sometimes we see these like big numbers or big RAS score and you want to move a guy up. Well, I already figured he was going to be that athletic. So, and the other piece kind of to it is it tells me to go back and rewatch. If I'm really different on a player from my prediction of what they did, something's wrong there. So I want to go back and watch that player. That I make a mistake in my prediction. I think he's faster or slower than he actually is. Do I need to change my report? Or maybe no, this matches up. This is what I thought it was. Maybe the time's wrong, bad day. Maybe the combine time isn't what I feel is reflective of that player. So Kyron Williams last year, for example, I predicted in my article he'd run a 4.48. He ran a 4.65. I went back to the tape, and I think his quickness kind of deceived me on the long speed. And so I made the adjustment in the ranking. I dropped him down. He wasn't as fast as I thought he would be, and yeah, it does show up on film. I think that's why it's important to look at it from that perspective.
Achane's one. I'm ready to see him run. Sneaky guy, I think, is also going to run in that running back group. I think he's going to run really fast as Keaton Mitchell. I think sub 4.4 as well when he gets out there. So that's a couple of guys. They've changed the schedule around this year as well, Shane, where the skill players have been running up front almost, I think, every year before this year, right? And the defenders always go last. Well, this year they realize they know who wants to watch this stuff and who. So we put the offensive skill players on the weekend now. So we're going to start with defensive line and linebackers, and that will include your edge rushers, interior defensive line, and off-ball linebackers will all be go on Thursday. And on Friday, we're going to get the defensive backs, corners, and safeties. Saturday, it's quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends. And then Sunday will be running backs and offensive linemen. So we're going to have to wait all the way until Sunday to see if Devin Achane can challenge that John Ross record. Because I think Achane's going to be the fastest guy at the combine, all positions.
Yeah, I tend to lean that way too. We'll see when I kind of go through the players and go through the list, because I think there's definitely we always have some corners that are pretty fast, but I think it's going to be that running back group. We're going to have some receivers that are pretty fast too, but I'm with you. I think it is Achane. It is an interesting change to the schedule there. I guess it makes sense for TV ratings that people want to watch the quarterbacks, the receivers, and the running backs, and the tight ends and those guys more so than the defensive linemen and linebackers. I'm sure it's going to hype up those numbers a bit.
Yeah. One change from last year, we will not be live broadcasting all the days of the combine. We will not be doing that this year. We tried last year, and you talk about a marathon that we gave out on that. We didn't have it, Shane. We had to tap out on that.
It's so few and far between for commentary too, especially with what you don't get to see everything. They cut away. We got commercials. You come back and you're missing numbers. You're catching up. You don't see all the drills. They're switching. It just wasn't effective or efficient to do.
Yeah, I took your advice, and on my defensive position piece, I predicted who would run the fastest 40 amongst our position groups: edge, defensive line, linebacker, corner, and safety. I didn't split it up amongst the groups that they have there. So let's get a spoiler alert here, Shane. I'm curious to see if who you think will be the fastest corner matches up with who I think is going to be the fastest corner.
Ooh, it's a good question. I haven't really thought about this yet. So
sorry to put you on the spot.
No, I know you're putting me on the spot there.
I am going with Riley Moss from Iowa.
Oh, okay. Probably not who I would have guessed. So I don't think we would have lined up there. I was still not sure. I'm still not sure who I'd put at the top of that though.
When is your predictions coming out?
Late next week. So I'm starting. I started some of the offensive stuff, and then this weekend I'll be.
So we'll all have to wait
Yeah.
and see who's the fastest corner is going to be. And Shane probably doesn't think it's going to be Riley Moss. And it probably won't be because I know I know a lot less about this than what Shane does. So
yeah, I don't think Sterling Thomas got an invite. He would have been my pick if he got an invite, but I don't think he did.
Yeah. So all right. It's enough of that. Let's talk some NFL draft with our guest tonight. He is the editor of Jets Wire and good buddy of the show. Great seeing him at the Senior Bowl again, as always. He is our good friend, Billy Riccette. Billy, man, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good, guys. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you, buddy.
All right. Thanks for having me on. How you guys doing?
We're doing good, man.
Yeah.
Glad we could take you away from whatever country music concert you were probably going to attend tonight without this.
Yep, I already won down. It just had one about a week ago.
Man, what man is living that life? All right, let's just cut right to the chase here, man. Two-part question for the Jets. Is Zach Wilson done, and is Derek Carr going to be the quarterback of the Jets opening week one opening?
I don't think Wilson's fully done with the Jets. I think they still want to keep him. They've been saying they want to keep him, they want to develop him, so we'll see how truthful they are. As far as Derek Carr goes, man, they are really puffing him up, aren't they? I mean, that report that came out over the weekend saying you'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer if you come to New York. It's like, let's pump the brakes a little bit. I like Derek Carr, but first ballot Hall of Famer. It's like the article I wrote earlier. It feels like an episode of Shark Tank. It's like they're trying to impress like Mr. Wonderful here. Like Derek Carr's like Kevin O'Leary, and they're just trying to, make him the favorite. And it's like you're going after Aaron Rodgers too. So how good do you really have to make Derek Carr feel to almost make him knowing that he's kind of like the second option? Because it still feels like Aaron Rodgers is their top option. But I could definitely see Derek Carr probably being their backup plan. It seemed like they're going to wait on Rodgers, but man, if they don't come away with either of these quarterbacks, then something will have drastically gone wrong, unless they feel comfortable with someone like Jimmy Garoppolo or even Ryan Tannehill, which would be interesting to see.
I'm not even sure Derek Carr's first ballot Fresno State Hall of Fame.
Wow, that man. At least get him in there. I mean, it's jeez.
Jake Hader might be taking that spot.
So, like, Billy and I go way back to the Blog Talk Radio days about 10 years ago. I still call you Bill. I don't even so even the Billy name's lost on me. But I want to talk about the Jets draft last year and kind of how it lines up for the future as well. One of I think the third time in NFL history that we had a team have the offensive rookie of the year in Garrett Wilson and the defensive rookie of the year in Sauce Gardner. Obviously a great draft for Joe Douglas, especially in that first round, but contributors all over the board for the Jets. With the quarterback situation still being in flux, do you think Douglas is viewed like he is this, great GM? Is the leash really long? If the quarterback situation doesn't get fixed, is there any trepidation about how the Zach Wilson pick and how he handled that, or is that kind of wiped under the rug now because of the great draft last year?
Yeah, and first, like you said, like Shane said, him and I go way back, so it's really great to get a chance to talk to you, man. He was like one of the first guests that I got to talk to back on the good old days of Jim Day, the good old fantasy Taz, our boy. Those are some good times. As far as Joe Douglas goes, I really feel like this is a make or break season for him. I think even with the great draft in 2022, the Zach Wilson thing obviously is going to sting, and there have been some other drafts that haven't really panned out. for one reason or another. I mean, you go back to like Mekhi Becton. You obviously can't project injuries like that, but the fact now is that he's played one game in 2 seasons, and you're coming up to his 5th-year option is due, which my guess is they're probably going to decline. I don't think they're going to guarantee that much money, and you don't know how healthy his knee is going to be going forward. So I really think that if the Jets don't make the playoffs this year, I think they're probably going to clean house. I think Douglas is going to be gone and Saul is going to be gone. I mean, especially with JD, this is, technically his 5th year with the Jets, his 4th. It'll be his 4th draft with the Jets, and he still hasn't had a winning record. And I know a lot of fans are getting very frustrated with him. It definitely feels like, they're more on the side of he needs to show a little more consistency, let's say, with some of these picks. 2022 definitely helped, but I think fans want more to kind of, almost wipe out, as we'll say like the 2020 draft and a little bit of 2021, which, weren't exactly the greatest, save for, maybe a couple players. So, yeah, I definitely think, going hard after the quarterback here. And, this is a big off season for them. This is really, this is their win now mode. It's been a while for them. So, yeah, this is going to be a fun off season for me. My first off season covering the Jets, and it's like, oh boy, here we go.
You mentioned Mekhi Becton and the injuries. Does that put offensive tackle in play, like front and center at the top of the draft board for the Jets, or maybe another position?
Oh, I absolutely think offensive tackle's in play in the first round. I think it almost feels like the top 3 players on their board, if even just getting like the fan sense, the 3 names are the top 3 tackles. I think Peter Skoronski, Paris Johnson, and Broderick Jones. It feels like if you give them a mock that doesn't have an offensive tackle first, they're already going to say, well, this is the worst mock I've ever seen. And I've already kind of gone through that. I had a mock where I had Brian Branch as their first pick. Well, they're not taking the safety round 1. It's got to be offensive tackle. It's like, yeah, offensive tackle absolutely, I think, is the biggest need. But what if all 3 of them are gone? Then what do you do? But yeah, absolutely, it's in play because George Fant's a free agent. He's probably not coming back. They're probably cutting Dwayne Brown. God bless him, dealing with that shoulder, and you got 12 games out of him. But he's going to be 38 years old. There's no need to have him. I don't even know what it's. That's another interesting contract that they doled out with that 2-year deal. So he's probably gone. So you hope you get Becton back, but even still, who's on the other side? Like Max Mitchell is fine. I don't think they can roll him, as a 17-game starter. They got to get somebody else out there. And so it's probably going to be kind of interesting. I just, wrote a piece too, thinking, try to get some convo. Should they go after Taylor Lewan, who just got cut? Now, do they want to gamble on all that health risk is a different story. But yeah, you got to figure out the bookend, because you're probably kicking Vera Tucker back inside. At least you have him if you need him to play outside. But I think preferably they want him inside and try to find a steady option outside.
Let's take us a step further. You mentioned Brian Branch, the safety. What other needs do you think the Jets have, whether it be, obviously we're looking at it from a draft perspective. I got to do some mocks still before free agency here. So, what might be some positions that the Jets could look at in the draft or free agency? Is there any other kind of glaring holes? Like, hey, if this isn't filled with a free agent, then we're going to see someone maybe day 2.
Yeah, we touched on safety a little bit because I don't think Lamarcus Joyner is coming back, and even Jordan Whitehead really wasn't all that great last season. So safety, I think, is a pretty good need on defense. Linebacker, probably a good need as well. CJ Mosley's not going to be around forever. Quan Alexander's not going to be around. Quincy Williams is a free agent, and it's really going to be interesting to see how they deal with him and Quinnen Williams, if that kind of ends up being almost a package deal. If they give Quinnen his big deal, are they going to have to do something for Quincy? But I think even after that, linebacker, even with or without Quincy, still going to have some holes there as well. So linebacker, I think, is definitely need. And then even kicking inside on the offensive line, center is probably going to be a big hole because there's a good chance Connor McGovern isn't going to be coming back to the Jets. So you got to fill somebody there. And I've already started plugging one of my guys in there as far as the Jets go in day 2, and that's John Michael Schmitz of Minnesota. I think he'd be a really good fit there in day 2. And then wide receiver, I think a little bit too, because Corey Davis is going to get cut. Braxton Berrios might get cut. Elijah Moore and Denzel Mims are both coming off disappointing years. So really the only kind of like steady option you have right now is Garrett Wilson. So you kind of need some other guys in there. So I could see, maybe later day 2, early day 3. I think you're going to see the Jets take a receiver as well.
Well, they only have 6 picks, so I assume that maybe they'll try to accumulate something somewhere. But that brings me to the next question. I was just looking at over the cap, and currently it says the Jets are in the hole about $250,000. So you mentioned Mosley and guys like that, or guys like him, maybe Carl Lawson. Are we looking at some more cap cuts here coming?
Oh, absolutely. And Carl Lawson, I think, is a really interesting one because, he was arguably their second best edge rusher, or second best defensive lineman, I should say, behind, of course, Quinnen Williams. And Carl Lawson, really, this was kind of his first full off season with the Jets because he had the Achilles issue in 2021, and he comes back and he gets 7 sacks. But now you're talking still, he's about 30 years old and he's due $15 million. That's a tough, it's a really tough call. Do they try to work something out with that contract? Maybe kick some of that money down the line. I think he's probably the most fascinating cap decision that I think the Jets have. I mentioned Corey Davis. I think that's an easy cut because he's like, I think $10.5 million, something like that. And he was banged up last year. He started off pretty good and then kind of tailed off in the second half of the season. So I don't think the Jets are going to pay him $10.5 million. So he's an easy cut. Berrios, they'll either, at the very least, they'll probably do a pay cut with him. But I could see them just moving on completely from him. So there's going to be some ways for them to get some cap flexibility as well, especially knowing that like we talked about with Quinnen Williams. I mean, that's going to be a big number that they have to come up with, and obviously the quarterback position. I mean, you get Derek Carr, you're talking what, $37 million a year, something like that. So I think the Jets are in an interesting position, but I think there's definitely some ways that they, a couple of easy ways they can maneuver to get some cap flexibility, but it's going to be really fascinating. But like I said, Carl Lawson, I think, is really going to be the intriguing one to see what they do.
Between Lawson and Davis, they could save $25 million against the cap with only a $1 million dead money hit. So those are probably the 2 prime candidates, I would say.
Yeah. I would absolutely agree with that. And like I said, Lawson, he was really productive, and it's going to be hard to, because it's like, how do you replace, I guess, 7 sacks? But they really like Jermaine Johnson. Michael Clemens, I thought, played pretty well as a rookie, and Bryce Huff, who, is, I think, a restricted free agent himself. I want to see him get more snaps. I know they seem to like giving him his limited option and kind of be like a pass rush specialist, but I really think you have something here with Huff that, if they do cut Lawson, I don't think it's the end of the world on the defensive line, especially with the way they like to rotate a lot of these guys too.
Now, look, Billy, you're an Eastern PA guy. You're wearing the Hazleton area shirt where I student taught, by the way. That's where I did my student teaching. I don't know if you remember that, but at Hazleton Area High School. So you are an Eagles fan outside of the Jets here. So I have to ask, because I want to keep mocking it, but I feel like Howie Roseman won't do it. Maybe you can you can help me out. Is there a chance that the Eagles take either Bijan Robinson at 10 or Jahmyr Gibbs at 32 or 31? Is there a chance that they take a running back in the first round?
Oh, I absolutely think there's a chance. In fact, I'm almost expecting it to happen.
All right, look, I'll take that. That'd be great.
I'm almost ready. Listen, I've been going back and forth on the Eagles taking Bijan Robinson at number 10. Obviously, great prospect, but I'm still trying to talk myself into them using the number 10 overall pick. But I'm almost expecting. I'm almost expecting, it to happen one way or the other, whether it's Bijan at 10 or Gibbs at 30, because, I could see them letting Miles Sanders walk in free agency. I know he really wants to come back to Philly, but they have so many other free agency needs. Obviously, at the very least, they're probably going to tag Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and that's going to be a good chunk of money. And you have some other guys that you got to try to take care of or figure out as well. Javon Hargrave, see what they do with him. So, yeah, I'm almost ready for that scenario to happen for Bijan Robinson to become an Eagle in a couple months.
It'd be wild. I'd be here for it. I need to find a good spot for him, and that feels so good if they don't bring back Sanders. So thank you for next mock. I'm Bijan at 10. That's what's happening.
It is crazy too, because he's a name you're seeing like all over the first round. It feels like that's kind of like his ceiling, but then you see some mocks where he falls all the way to like the 25 to 30 range. So it's like, you're right. He's one of those players that's like, where do you fit him? He's such a good player, but who's going to pull the trigger? So that's going to be so fun to watch, especially with, a bunch of some of these other running backs like Gibbs. We saw, of course, a guy like Tajay Sharp at the Senior Bowl. So there's a lot of good guys. So Bijan's going to be so fascinating in this first round.
He should be drafted in the second round with every other running back.
Yeah,
but realistically speaking, they don't take Bijan at 10. Is the interior defensive line spot, despite they went with Jordan Davis high last year, they could lose Hargrave, Fletcher Cox, and Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph. All these guys are probably gone. They have Milton Williams still, who I loved in 21 as a prospect, and Jordan Davis. But is that maybe the most likely spot they go? Somebody like maybe a Brian Breezy or somebody else like that?
I could see Breezy, absolutely. I think for me, it's two positions. If it's not going to be running back, I think it's defensive line, whether it's inside or outside. So could be Breezy. I could see Tyree Wilson. Some of these other guys, or cornerback. I think, and then I'm really starting to talk myself into Devin Witherspoon, and I like Christian Gonzalez too. But I went and watched Witherspoon a little bit too again, just a little bit ago. Man, he's fun to watch. He's such a good player, and I think he would fit the Eagles so well. And they're going to need, I think, a number 2 corner, because Bradbury's probably not coming back. If they find a way to get Bradbury back, I'll be, number one, the fan of me will be very happy that they get Bradbury, but I'll be stunned if it happens. So I think they're going to need somebody opposite Slay, and I think either of those cornerbacks, or really there's a number of cornerbacks. I've seen Joey Porter Jr. Mock there a little bit too. So I think there's a lot of these top corners. Or they could go D line at 10, take someone like Breezy and someone like Deonte Banks or Cam Smith, someone like that at 30. I think that would be almost the ideal scenario, is to get one of these top D linemen and then one of these top corners, and especially corner, because I've heard a lot of people say, and I'm starting to agree with them, this corner class is so deep and it's so good. So there's a lot of good guys that you can go with. So if they don't take one at 10, they can easily go at number 30 or even round 2, because then they still have, I think, round 2 and round 3 with all these good corners. So I think they're in a good position, even with not having a lot of day 3 picks.
Last question to Shane.
You're going to the combine, Bill. What are you excited? What are you excited to see? I know you're going to be repping there again this year, and I'm excited to follow your coverage. So, what anyone you're most excited to interview, to see, experience?
I appreciate that, Shane. Thank you. Yeah, excited to be at the combine, 4th year going there. Just the entire experience as a whole for me is fun. Just getting a chance to talk to some of these players and some of these coaches. Now I found out, we got the schedule as far as like with the Jets. Joe Douglas is going to be talking to the media, but Robert Saleh, I guess, either isn't going or isn't talking, whatever. So we'll at least hear from JD, but not from Saleh. These new coaches, it'll be interesting to pick their brain a little bit. And then, some of these other players, if I get a chance to talk to like Sharp after his Senior Bowl performance, I think that'll be really cool. But just in general, like just the whole experience and, some of the stories that come out of it, like last year, like, those that don't follow me, if you see me on Twitter, I have got big timed by Lovie Smith in my name because if you heard, there was some people may have talked about how Lovie Smith got a question of the cover, kind of like the re-rise of cover 2 last year, like 2 high defenses. Well, I was the one that asked him that, because it was, we're coming off the rise of like the Brandon Staleys of the world and people like that. So I asked Lovie Smith his thoughts, and he goes, "Did you say 2 high safeties?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Do you know who I am?" But then fortunately I actually talked to him in the hallway after his press conference as well, and he was really kind enough to chat with me a little bit and give his thoughts on why cover 2 even went away in the first place, and how he was happy that it was coming. It was kind of making its return. So that was really cool. Brandon Staley was really cool to talk to as well. So it's really cool to get to talk to some of these coaches, especially like kind of if you're able to catch them outside of these press conferences. Zach Taylor's another one that's been like so cool to talk to over these years.
Well, Billy, man, we appreciate you taking the time to come on with us tonight, talk Jets, talk Eagles, talk Combine. It's been very great to hear, and we all love following your coverage. But tell everybody listening or watching this podcast right now where they can follow your coverage at and how to get there.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. It was awesome to talk to you guys again. You two are 2 of my favorites on here. Yeah, follow me on Twitter. It's just my name at Billy_Riccette, Riccette. A lot of my work over at JetsWire now, so it's definitely going to be a fun off season. Those are really the main spots. Yeah, I'll be hopefully doing a lot of tweeting from Indianapolis next week, and try to catch up with some of these players, and should be a fun week. So I'm definitely excited to be back in Indy next week.
Well, we like I said, we look forward to that coverage, and it was great seeing you in Mobile again this year, and
you too, guys.
Look forward to seeing you again next year, and look forward to seeing all that content coming out of the Combine next week. Billy Riccette, everybody from JetsWire, joining us tonight. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Appreciate
Good to talk
you guys.
To you,
Thank you.
Good stuff there from the JetsWire editor, Billy Riccette there. And anything stand out to you that he had to say there, Shane?
No, it was great. I mean, I love the breakdown of of the Jets' needs too. I think was huge because they're a team with the offensive line woes and some of the defensive woes. It feels like the Jets are kind of complete. I like he broke down some of those positions. We'll see what that quarterback position goes. I don't know. I won't get into it. I don't think Derek Carr's the worst idea. So I'm here for it.
Yeah, I saw someone tweet today, said, "I'm not doing another Jets mock draft until I see what happens with the quarterback position." And it's fair. I mean, that's a fair thing to do because that is the catalyst for everything that's going to follow the New York Jets this offseason. So anxious to see where that goes. And it's going to affect our mock drafts too, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
Because what if they don't get anybody? Then all of a sudden they're in play at quarterback, right? So
yeah, because you got to do something. So it's and that goes for all these teams. Well, I think we're going to see massive changes, and this is why mock drafts, especially this early, are just about possibilities. A lot for me is helping me in the process of evaluating players and draft capital, and kind of where these players are going to go. Then once free agency happens, now we start to really look at the teams and the team needs a lot more.
You mentioned Carr, Rodgers, and Jimmy Garoppolo. One name he didn't mention, I wish I would have asked him about, was a potential maybe trade for Lamar Jackson. I've heard that bandied about on the Twitter. I don't know how seriously I take it though, but he is another name that could be moving, and that will have an effect on the draft and how many first round picks the Ravens end up with.
It's like I didn't think Russell Wilson was getting traded last season, so you never know. But I'll be surprised. I
will too. I think he's going to stay in Baltimore. I think that was the whole point of hiring Todd Monken, to be honest.
Yeah. Was
to keep him there. Shane, you mentioned on Twitter last week, and I wanted to talk about it on last week's show, but we just ran out of time. You've gone back and you've been hitting that tape on some guys, getting caught up, maybe looking back at some other guys. So who were some of these names that you've kind of taken a shining to post Senior Bowl and after the season?
Well, basically, I looked at the combine list and wanted to kind of do some better work on some of the lower end combine guys that I felt like I didn't know quite as well. And so I have a list on Twitter back from the 14th if you want to see the whole list. But there definitely was some that we've seen in All-Star games and things that had good weeks, whatever. Running back wise, then Eric Prince, the running back out of Tulsa, impressed me more than I remember in terms of his kind of speed and athleticism. So he was impressive. Offensive line wise, John Ojukwu from Boise State. I actually really liked his kind of strength and reach. He was a lot longer than I had written down. I don't know what I missed. It's just, I don't know if you've gone through that, Brad. Sometimes you have guys you go back and rewatch, or you see the combine, you're like, why did I write that? Like, what was my state of mind when I was watching this game? Right, that happens. I think he was definitely one where I didn't have him as much of anything. I went back and watched it, and I was like, oh, he's a decent day 3 type of player. That's interesting. One name that really popped for me was Jalen Graham, the linebacker out of Purdue. I was really impressed with him and some of the sideline to sideline ability. He's big, downhill attacking in the run game. He was someone that I didn't super have on my radar. That was impressive. And 2 secondary guys, real quick. Miles Brooks from Louisiana Tech, who I think we've mentioned in passing, or you have to me. And I mean, super good kind of jam cover corner, really natural mover. And Jordan Howden, the safety from Minnesota, really commanded some of that defense in the passing game a lot more than I initially had thought. Being able to watch kind of everything and see how he kind of seemed to be kind of calling the plays, the formations, getting the guys adjusted. And then, he was kind of that center fielder that shut down some of the deep passes and deep plays, really always in position, always where he should be. Super interesting, maybe special teams guy too at the next level. So a couple names going back and rewatching that maybe you see at the combine, you're like, I've never heard of this guy. Now you know.
You mentioned Jalen Graham, the linebacker for Purdue. That reminds me of a couple of years ago with Derek Barnes, their linebacker, and that guy, man, just almost came out of nowhere to me. And I'm like, man, he's a stud. Ends up going the 3rd round of the Lions. I don't know how much success he's had so far in his NFL career, but you mentioned Miles Brooks, and when I saw that, I went and watched Miles Brooks, and he went up my rankings big after that. I didn't have him at all, and I moved him up a great deal on my board as well. And it seems like Louisiana Tech, for a program that's not the best program, seems like they have at least one guy every year that we end up talking about in the NFL draft. I mentioned Milton Williams when we had Billy on. That was a guy I had 25th overall on my board 2 years ago. Yeah. So it's Louisiana Tech, man. Yeah.
Got a couple players there. Yeah, pretty good. Worth maybe. I feel like I'm always late on those guys. I got to maybe get on Louisiana more.
Well, they're in Conference USA and their television coverage sucks.
Yeah,
so it's like,
fair.
But that's going to change this year, Shane, because they've adopted the MAC philosophy this year. Don't know if you saw that or not.
I did not. But, no, that's exciting.
And so November we have the midweek MACtion. Well, this year, October, we're going to have midweek Conference USA. We got to get a catchy name for it. But October this year, all of their conference games are going to be played during the week, like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
I love that. I think more teams should do it. It just breaks it up. It's always nice to have that game on and split up the scouting a little bit. I feel like I get extra games, and I feel like I watch more MAC than some of the bigger conferences sometimes because they're not on at the same time.
Well, you're watching all those guys early in the season too. You know the midweek MACtion's coming later in the year, so you don't bother watching them at all.
Right, that's fair. That's fair too.
Shane, we had something interesting take place yesterday. The USFL Spring League came back last year, resurrected from the 80s. They had a college player draft yesterday, and it was players that are eligible to be drafted in the NFL this year. They went, 10 rounds, 80 players drafted. What was your takeaway from this? Because, I mean, there was a handful of guys I think we both agree will be high NFL draft picks and will probably no way they're going to play in the USFL anytime soon. But there's a lot of either fringe draftable or priority free agents that were selected here that I think very well could end up on USFL rosters next year.
It's such an interesting draft. I was live tweeting from the draft countdown account for the first couple rounds as they took guys. Cause you and I talked about, we had no idea how this was going to go. Like, are they going to take bottom end of the draft? Definitely maybe not make a camp players, or are they going to take drafted guys that are going to get drafted and hope, they flame out or something happens in 2 or 3 years. And so it was interesting to see because I think it depended on the team. It depended on some strategy. Because some teams were like New Orleans Breakers. They went hard at, to me, NFL players. Maybe not all of them drafted, but I think they took a couple guys that will get drafted. Maybe even upwards of 3 or 4. And then they took a lot of guys that are going to be high priority free agents. I mean, their first round pick was Tyler Scott, the receiver out of Cincinnati. I haven't day 2.
Go in the second round. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And so I was like, well, and then I'm arguing with people on Twitter that they're like, well, that must mean he suck. No, I don't think it means he sucks. I think it means that for the Breakers, if he's smaller, he's faster, he would crush this league. If he flames out, we'll take him in 2-3 years, right? Whereas some teams were taking guys that I don't think will even sniff a camp. And so, especially in the later rounds, small school players, the Pittsburgh Maulers drafted a local kid, Traquan Dorsey out of St. Francis. He's not gonna go to the NFL. So there were some different strategies, maybe different rounds. Some mixed it up a little bit. I thought that was kind of interesting. But it's interesting to see because most of these players are not going to be. They're definitely not playing this year. They're all prepping for the NFL, and then if they don't make it year 1, they get cut. They can't find a team. Now you're hoping they come in next year.
Yeah, you mentioned Pittsburgh drafting Lindsey Scott, quarterback. I like that. He's a player I actually think could be benefit from playing in this league from Incarnate Word. And they drafted his teammate Taylor Grimes, a receiver.
Smart. Smart to do, right?
Like as they also drafted Isaiah Land. I think we both think he's going to play in the NFL. It was interesting. You mentioned New Orleans. They also drafted Keaton Mitchell, a running back from East Carolina, a guy we talked about as potentially just going sub 4.3 in the 40 at the combine. So it was interesting to see. You know what my biggest takeaway from this was, though, Shane? Not the players that were drafted, and it's the fact that you're doing this and you're drafting guys that you're trying to hold their rights, for in the USFL for, multiple, could be years down the road. It tells me they think that their league is sustainable to last that long. And that's a positive to me because with this league, with the XFL, which we're going to talk about in a second, there is enough players to sustain, talent to sustain these leagues in the spring and the CFL as well. But they can only take so many American players, right, in the CFL. So, but with these two leagues, there's enough players to sustain that. The NFL needs these leagues to develop offensive linemen, quarterbacks, to have kickers and punters and holding there, so to speak, guys like that. Develop. Some of these guys need development, and to make back of the roster NFL guys. I'm all for it, and I hope that that's what this means is they think that their league is going to survive for 3, 4, 5 years.
Which is great. I think it gives you a long-term plan of action to know that you may have some players in as a backup if they come out. I mean, you can even see that in the strategy a bit. The Philadelphia Stars, 5 of their first 7 picks were all offensive linemen. They were just taking offensive linemen, and probably hoping that in a year or two, none of them were like super standouts. I mean, Earl Bostic from Kansas, I think, was a combine invite player of that group, but hoping that in a year or two, we can toss these players in, and that's going to be positions tough to fill at some of these smaller levels.
That's a great point. And one of those offensive linemen they drafted was a guy I starred to go back and watch, and the guy is South Florida offensive tackle Demontre Jacobs. I starred him to go back and watch because of his weigh-in. I mean, the guy's got over 11-inch hands, 37-inch arms. His wingspan is huge. I mean, he was, nearly as big as DeJuan Jones, as far as wingspan and length goes. But I didn't watch a lot of South Florida tape, so it's a guy I want to go back and look at. But if he's not ready, like say for the NFL, which he may not be, he's probably not going to be drafted. But if he can go to the USFL and, use that length and dominate, hey, get in a camp the next year, something like that could work out.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea. And I don't know, it was cool, like seeing Birmingham draft Malik Cunningham from Louisville, the quarterback, Darius Davis, the receiver from TCU, draft the speed and athleticism. And to me, I'm like, I know both those guys are going to play in the NFL. I kind of want him to play in the USFL. I would love to see Malik Cunningham just out there running around. He would tear it up. It'd be a lot of fun.
Malik Cunningham could be playing professionally an hour from where he played his high school football in Montgomery.
There you go.
So the other spring league that opened up this past weekend, the XFL, their third attempt at this. The first one lasted a year. The second one lasted 6 weeks. COVID kind of killed that one. So we're back for the third go around, this time owned by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and his business partner, Danny Garcia, and somebody else who was with them all weekend, whose last name I can't remember. But I thought the games were fun. I'll say this. I watched a good bit of all 4 games, and I thought the games were well played for the most part. And I think the best thing about the XFL is some of the rules they have in place. I would love to see major football adopt, to be honest. But especially the after point conversion, Shane. Did you like the 3-point from the 10-yard line?
I love that. I love it,
man. That's awesome. That's for those that didn't watch the games, after there are no extra points, no kick extra points in the XFL. You can go for 1 point from the 2-yard line, 2 points from the 5, and 3 points from the 10. It was good stuff, and that let St. Louis come back from a 12-point deficit to win, by 3 at the end, because they also don't have onside kicks. But if you were trailing or tied in the fourth quarter, you can attempt a one-play 4th and 15 from your own 25, and if you pick it up, you get the ball. If not, the other team gets the ball. It's great. I love that. And that's another rule I could see. And their kickoff rule is pretty good too, I think. So, if nothing else, I'd love to see rules from the XFL adopted.
Not to pick another one, but I love the replay system and having the transparency of like hearing what is happening. Like how do we not have that, right, in the NFL? But it was fun.
And it also makes it quicker.
Right. It was compared to some of the NFL replays. It was like you see what's happening, or at least if it's not as quick, you know why they're trying to do the down and the distance and figure it out, right? So, that was great. Yeah, I watched the St. Louis San Antonio game. Bruce Gradkowski, the offensive coordinator for St. Louis, is a family friend, so it was nice to see his team get that comeback win there, like you talked about.
And AJ McCarron trying to get back in there.
Hey, good for him. He's not bad.
Good for the Mobile native AJ McCarron there. Just glad he's not quarterback for Cincinnati anymore. Moving on. Daniel Jeremiah released his second mock draft this week, Shane, and I took some notes, and there's some wild stuff in here, man. Jalen Carter, first overall pick. That's might actually been the most sane thing I saw in his mock draft, to be honest. That wouldn't shock me. Edge 1, Tyree Wilson over Will Anderson.
Yeah, that's wild. I don't think it's as crazy, right? Because you and I have had Will Anderson number one player wire to wire. We will continue to. Last year we had Kayvon Thibodeau. He ended up getting taken over. I think Will Anderson obviously a much better prospect, but Tyree Wilson's a very different player. He's more of that traditional 4-3 base end. He's got the size. Will Anderson, like Von Miller, kind of a stand-up pass rusher. I'd still be surprised if it happens. I imagine it's not the last time we hear about it, though.
4 offensive tackles in top 17 wasn't really surprising to me. If you're a Bengals fan, that's concerning, right? Because if that's a place you're looking at, one of those, you're probably not getting a guy in the first round. If that happens, 4 quarterbacks in round 1, Bryce Young to Houston, CJ Stroud to Indy, Will Levis to Las Vegas. And as Jeff Risdon said a couple weeks on our show, Anthony Richardson to Detroit with their second first round pick at pick 18, Shane.
It'd be wild. I'd be a little surprised. I have Anthony Richardson much lower. I'm sticking to my guns at least for a little while longer that he's not going to be a first round pick. And I think the Lions are a team that has been utilizing a little more of the advanced analytics in terms of evaluating prospects. I don't know if Anthony Richardson's going to fit that. Doesn't mean they won't draft him. They drafted some players that don't fit that, but I'd be surprised. But I think that 18 feels better than some people having him 9 to Carolina.
Last thing on Jeremiah's mock draft, Bijan Robinson 19 to Tampa Bay, Shane. Would you like that fit, fantasy perspective?
I would. I am a Rachaad White fan, so it would hurt. I think Rachaad White, who had a good season when Leonard Fournette kind of slowed down there, but I think it's an ideal spot for a pretty good interior offensive line. Bijan run first offense and let Bijan run it, and Kyle Trask just not turn it over and see what happens. I'd like it.
All right, we got a lot of questions, Shane, so let's get to them here. Couple on Twitter, both from @IBleedGreen24_7. First question from him is, who were the top 5 corners in this draft, specifically looking for one for Philadelphia? We probably should ask Billy this, to be honest. Well, he kind of touched on it a little bit.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did hit on, especially those first round guys, because I think, guys that fit any scheme, Christian Gonzalez, Devin Witherspoon. I think Joey Porter maybe needs a more specific scheme. I think you want some press man coverage if you're going to take him, in my opinion. So I like Gonzalez, Witherspoon. I would say your guy Cam Smith from South Carolina, I think could fit almost anywhere. And then I'd probably go Emmanuel Forbes from Mississippi State. I think could fit anywhere. And I like all those for the Eagles as well.
His other question was Darnell Wright, offensive tackle from Tennessee, who I had going to the Bengals in my Cincinnati Bengals mock draft today in round 1. He wants to know if Darnell Wright could play right guard early on and then kick out to right tackle, maybe down the road.
You could do it. You could do a Tyler Smith situation. I don't think that benefits Darnell Wright enough. I don't think he's in that kind of raw space. We're like, okay, we got to wait to have him play tackle. I assume, speaking for the Eagles yet again, where maybe they don't need someone to replace Elaine Johnson right now, right? But if you draft Darnell Wright, you have him play guard immediately where you have an opening, and then maybe you can kick out the tackle. It could happen. He'd probably be outside of Peter Skoronski. I think Darnell Wright's probably the best option of those potential first round offensive tackles to do that, though.
I almost think I'd rather maybe trade off of 30 and maybe try to grab Cody Mock or something early in round 2, if that was my plan.
Yeah, you might have to take Cody Mock and at 30.
Maybe. In the Discord, Pig Bird Jet Fan asked, and this is all Shane all the time question right here. In a dynasty rookie draft, Shane, what do you need to part with 101? And I assume that's because you're taking Bijan Robinson at 101. So what are you going to have to get to not take Bijan Robinson?
Man, it would be a lot. I mean, it's a lot. I have I traded for what ended up becoming the 101 in one league last offseason. So that feels good. And I was just thinking, what would it take? What would it take even to move down one pick, right? Move down to the 102. You're probably taking Jahmyr Gibbs at that point. I would probably need 3 first rounders. I need the 102, a 24 first, and maybe the 202 and an early second as well. Even then, I'm like, I kind of just want to take Bijan. It's especially if you're not playing super flex, you're not starting 2 quarterbacks. So Bryce Young and CJ Stroud are out of the picture. Just keep the 101. Just draft Bijan. You'll be happy. The value will be good. You can always trade him later if you get concerned about how he holds up.
Well, there you go. We got a few questions in the comments section. Not a question, but a statement. Tommy must be new here. I don't know what to say about that.
Yes. Brian is definitely a Bengals fan. He wears that on the sleeve. So,
but Tommy did have a couple of good questions here in regards to the Tennessee Titans for this one. With Tennessee releasing Taylor Wan and Robert Woods, will Tannehill also be out the door? Yeah, it seems like they may be rebuilding here. They may be cleaning house.
Well, when you fire the GM, I think it's usually you fire John Robinson. So let's kind of wipe away his dirty work here, right? I think Tannehill did well for them. It's been one of the best quarterbacks they've had for a while, to be honest with you. But yeah, it's probably time to move on. I don't think Malik Willis is the answer. They probably don't think that as well. It could be a bridge year for quarterback for them.
Oh, he knows. Everybody knows.
Everyone knows.
He also has a question talking about Purdue. Where do you think Charlie Jones ends up, and when does he get selected?
I feel like maybe I'm a little too high on Charlie Jones because
Combine is going to be the tell here, right?
He should do really well. This should be a place where he excels. But I've had him in the 3rd round here for a little while. Maybe that's a little high. I mean, maybe I should put some of the Senior Bowl standouts, the Jaden Reeds, over him. But I do think the Combine's going to be a spot where he goes. So I'll say I'll be safe. I'll say early day 3, early round 4 for Charlie Jones. Sizzle, as we call him. Sizzle.
Jones was supposed to be at the Senior Bowl and an injury, so hopefully he's even able to work out. I guess that's something to monitor as well. But he should have been another one of those guys that popped at the Senior Bowl because I think he would have had a lot of success, a la Jaden Reed, Tank Dell, and Michael Wilson as well. Receivers that stood out at Senior Bowl. I think Charlie Jones could have had that kind of week. Last question from Dwayne here. Do you think the GPS tracker is going to replace the 40-yard dash in the future? I think that's not a crazy question at all. There are NFL teams now who don't even care about the 40-yard dash is non-existent to them. I know the Rams are one of those teams, right? They strictly use GPS tracking as their metric for speed. And that's why they were higher on Cooper Kupp, I believe, than other teams were, and where they were able to get him in the 3rd round. And the success he's had is because he was very fast, with GPS tracking, but he only ran what in the 4.6s at the combine. So he was able to drop, and that's how. So yeah, good question.
Yeah, I don't think the 40 will go away because I think we have such historic data that it's good to compare against. Teams will want that, and the GPS tracking in game. You have to get a guy on a breakaway run too, and I think sometimes those aren't built equal. So I think it'll be good to have both points of data, but I do think the GPS is probably more accurate. It probably is much better at predicting how fast these guys are, like Brian mentioned with Cooper Kupp. So it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't be. I don't think it'd be great for us because I don't know how public that data would end up being, and that's going to be the problem. But who knows? Maybe they just run it at the combine and use GPS and miles per hour. That'd be fun.
Yeah. So for us, yeah, I mean we're numbers guys, and if we don't get those numbers, we're not happy. We openly moan about this throughout this process. We don't get testing on guys. We get grumpy. Final thoughts, Shane. We've got one more podcast before the combine starts, and that's all we're going to talk about next week, pretty much, unless something trade wise or something breaks. We won't have a guest on next week. We're going to be all combine all the time on the show next week. But final thoughts on this episode and anything else.
It's great having Billy on, and I think it was fun. I'm kind of ready for the combine to happen myself, so I'll be interested to talk next week and be on the lookout for the articles. We're doing some team mock drafts. You and Brad and Miranda have been stepping up and doing that. So make sure you check those out. If you want your team to be done by one of us, then
let us know.
Keep tweeting at Draft Countdown, and we'll make it happen at some point. So try that too.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, we're taking the request line is open. Shane just said,
yes,
is what that is. But yes, I had the Bengals team mock come out today. Miranda had the Packers this past weekend. Brad will have the Lions coming up tomorrow. And then we ran a poll this past weekend to see who the next two would be after that. And Chicago was the leading vote getter. So Miranda will be have that coming up next week. And Brad will have the Texans team mock coming up as they finish the second. So lots of team mocks coming up. And like I said, if you want to see your favorite team mock draft done, tweet us at Draft Countdown. We'll take requests. We like getting user feedback. It's always good. But that's going to do it for tonight's episode of the podcast. If you are new to the channel here on YouTube and would like to see more of this content, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and like the videos, and you'll see more of our smiling faces each and every week on the Draft Countdown YouTube channel. If you listen to the audio version of this podcast, please give us a 5-star rating on be it Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcast, and share that out on your social media platforms as well. That would be a great help to us. Follow me on Twitter at Deep Fried Draft. Follow Shane on Twitter at Shane P. Hallam. Follow Draft Countdown on Twitter at Draft Countdown. And head to draftcountdown.com for all of your daily draft needs. For Shane, I'm Brian. Good night, everybody.